Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to another edition or video or episode or whatever you want to call it of Watchcastage. My name is Bandrew, and I received a request from nice guy Curtis to make a video discussing watch terminology, and I figured, what the heck, why not do that so you may gain a better understanding of what I'm discussing when I am doing my videos on watches. Let's start with three different types of watches. We have analog, we have digital, and we have something called Ani-Digi. Analog means it has these three watch hands. It's the typical old school style watch that you're used to seeing. This is going to be your analog watch. Then you have the digital watch. Pretty self-explanatory. It has a digital readout. It's going to be quartz. There you go. Lastly, you got your Ani-Digi. This has the analog handset and a digital readout. This is the Arni, but the most famous Ani-Digi is most likely the Breitling Aerospace. I can't afford it. I don't have my hands on it. So we're going to have to make do with the Arni. Has the analog readout and the digital readout. That's the Ani-Digi, digital, and analog watches. Next, I want to define the two categories of watches that there really are. There are quartz and mechanical timepieces, and mechanical watches can be broken down into two subsets. Quartz watches are going to be battery-powered, meaning they are going to require a battery in most cases, and in most cases you can tell a quartz watch based on the seconds hand ticking once every second. Then you have mechanical watches, and the thing that differentiates them from quartz watches is they do not require a battery. They are powered off of human input. The hand-wound timepieces are going to require you to wind the crown. It's going to differ how frequently you have to do that. Most people would just wind it every single morning or evening before they go to bed. And then you have automatic, which the Sinn 556A is, and on the rear of this, there is a rotor, and while you're wearing this, that rotor will rotate around and move about, and that will actually wind the watch. So you do not need to manually input the hand winding to power that watch. Those are the three different types of watches, or the two different types of watches, quartz and mechanical, and under the mechanical umbrella, you have hand-wound and automatic. Next, let's discuss some more minute definitions, and the first one is going to be anti-reflective coating. That is pretty self-explanatory, but I wanted to provide you with an example. This Hamilton khaki mechanical, you can see it is reflecting a lot. It does not have any anti-reflective coating. And then you have the Sinn 556A. You wouldn't know that I have blasting studio lights on because it has anti-reflective coating on the underside as well as on the top of the crystal. Some people may like that or dislike it, but it's undeniable that it makes the crystal disappear. It looks as though you're looking directly at the dial. That's the anti-reflective coating, and you can see it right there. Next, we have the term bezel, and that refers to the area around the dial of the watch. This Hamilton khaki mechanical does have a bezel, as it does have something around the dial, but that's not typically what people are talking about. What the majority of people are talking about when you say bezel is what you see on these three watches, the rotating bit around the outside of the dial. And I do want to point out that there are multiple different styles of bezel. This is just three of the available types. The Arni has a dive time bezel, which counts upwards. So you go 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. The Sinn 104 has a countdown bezel, which goes from 60, 55, 50, 45, so on. And lastly, you have this 24-hour bezel on the Christopher Ward watch, which is what you would use with the GMT hand or the Greenwich Mean Time hand, which allows you to track up to 2, or even on this watch, because this is a rotating bezel, up to 3 different time zones at the same time. Next, we have the term bracelet, and if I had to describe it, it is the metal strap that comes on many watches. I know it's kind of counterintuitive to call this a metal strap, but I'm trying to be descriptive. You can see on my Sinn 556, I have a leather strap. On the Christopher Ward, this would be referred to as a bracelet. Next, we have the term case, and that refers to what the watch is built in. The case is what the watch lives in. So the case would be all of this metal. Case diameter would be from this side to this side. That tells you how wide the case actually is. Then we have the term case back, and that is pretty self-explanatory. It describes the backing on the case. Here we have a Timex Marlin, which has a press-on case back. It's not going to be very water resistant, and that is something you see on most dress watches. You'll see a 30-meter water resistance or 3-bar. Here in the Casio AE1200, you have a screw-on case back. You can tell by these 4 screws on the rear. And lastly, on the Sinn 556, it has a screw-down case back. The entire case back is screwed down, and there are washers in there to really waterproof it. And you can also get the display case back on some watches. That allows you to look inside and see the actual movement, as opposed to something like this Casio. The movement's not necessarily pretty in most quartz watches, so they just shove some stainless steel on the back so you don't have to look at it. Next, we have the term complication, and that refers to anything that is being displayed on the watch other than your basic time. This Hamilton Khaki Mechanical does not have any complications. It just has the hours, minutes, and seconds hand. But when we look at the Sinn 104, we have a countdown bezel. That would be a complication. And most importantly on this watch, you have a day-date complication, which I absolutely love. Tells you the day of the week and the date that it is. So a complication, again, would be any information that the watch is providing you that is not going to be the basic time. When you start looking at digital watches, the complications get crazy. This has 5 time zones, 5 alarms, chronograph. It does so much. There you go. That's the complication. Next, you have the term crown, and that refers to this little bit that sticks out the side of it that you're able to utilize to adjust the watch, whether it be to hand wind it, or whether it be to set the time, or on more complicated watches to set the day or date, or with something like the Breitling Aerospace to give yourself a headache, because that is a single crown Ani-Digi watch, and it seems like a nightmare to work with. Then you have the term crown guards, and as you can see on the Hamilton Mechanical, there is no protection for the crown. So while you're wearing this, you may snag a piece of clothing on the crown, and that causes unnecessary torque and tension and wear and tear on the very delicate movement inside. On the Sinn 556, it has a couple pieces of metal that ramp up towards the crown, and this would kind of deflect any kind of clothing or any kind of thing that might snag on the crown and cause that unnecessary tension. So based on the case shape, it has these crown guards built in to protect unnecessary wear on the crown. Next, we have the term crystal, and that refers to the piece of glass that is protecting the dial. This comes in many different materials. You have acrylic, you have plastic, you have mineral glass, and the cream of the crop is sapphire because that is the most difficult to actually scratch or damage. Some folks may want acrylic because it does have a more vintage hue to it. Some folks will go for the Omega Speedmaster with acrylic because they like the way that it looks a bit more than sapphire. But watches also have different shapes to the crystal on them. This Casio has a completely flat crystal. The crystal does not protrude above the case. The Sinn 556, again, has a completely flat crystal. It does not protrude above the case. But then when we look at a Christopher Ward, it's beautiful. I love this watch. You can see that the case ends and then the crystal continues to protrude above it. This would be a domed sapphire, and it gives you more of a vintage look, but it does sit a little bit larger on your wrist because it does have that protruding crystal on top of the case. Then you have the term dial, and that refers to the piece of the watch that you look at, the thing that's used to actually tell the time, where all of this stuff is printed, the 3, 6, 9, 12. Over here, all the markers, all the indices are placed on the dial. I don't know how else to describe dial. It's what you look at to read it. This black part on the Zinn, this black part on the Christopher Ward are the dial of the watch. Next, we have the term lug, and that refers to these protrusions on the ends of the case, which ultimately end up holding the watch strap in place. These pieces of metal that protrude out of the case that hold the strap in place. You can see it on the Arnie as well. Little bit of protruding metal, which ultimately holds the strap on the watch. Then we have the term lug to lug, which some people call lug tip to lug tip because it is more descriptive. That refers to the measurement of one lug tip to another lug tip. And this is a really useful measurement because this will be informative in telling you how large the watch will sit on your wrist. The smaller the lug to lug or lug tip to lug tip, the smaller it will sit on your wrist. You will find very large case diameter watches with a small lug to lug, which will fit extremely well on your wrist, but you'll also find very small case shapes, 36, 38 millimeter, but they have extremely long lugs, leading to a large lug to lug measurement, meaning they sit poorly on people with smaller wrists. Then the next term is lug width. This refers to the measurement between two lugs, and this measurement will tell you what size watch strap will fit on a specific watch. The most common are going to be even numbers, 18, 20, 22 millimeter, but you can also find 17, 19, and 21 millimeter lug width watches. They're just a little bit more uncommon, and when people do, or when watch companies do put those out, people tend to get mad at them about that. Next, we have the term drilled lugs, which refers to, say it with me, holes being drilled in the lugs. Pretty self-explanatory, but the reason for this is it allows you to use a push tool to remove the spring bar from the watch and change out watch straps much easier. Next, we have the term hacking, and this refers to the ability to pull out the crown of the watch and have the seconds hand stop. This is really useful if you are trying to synchronize multiple watches, or in my case, if you have a atomic clock on the wall and you like to set your watches pretty accurately every week or so. This will allow you to set the exact time when you're setting your watch. Next, we have the term hand wind, and as I alluded to, this refers to winding the crown to wind up the watch and ensure that it keeps on ticking. That's pretty much it. Next, we have the term lume, and this refers to the luminous printing that is done on the dial, which absorbs the light around it and reflects it back when the light is off, meaning you can read your watches in the dark. I'll go ahead and shut the lights off in the studio so you can see the lume on these three watches. Next term is micro adjust or micro adjustment. This refers to watches that come on bracelets. On the clasp of this bracelet, you can see that we have 3 holes here. This allows you to make micro adjustments, little adjustments to the length of the bracelet to better fit your wrist. This is really important because on metal bracelets, the links in the bracelet are fairly large, making it extremely difficult to get a good fit if you're just stuck by removing or adding an entire link. The micro adjustment allows you to make those fine adjustments to get the right fit. Next, we have the term milled clasp versus pressed clasp. First, let's look at a pressed clasp. It is essentially just a clasp on a bracelet that is pressed out of a sheet of metal. This type of clasp is very thin. It feels relatively cheap, and it is significantly cheaper for the manufacturer to make this type of clasp. And it works, but it just doesn't feel that great. And here is a milled clasp, and you can tell that the metal is significantly thicker. It feels much more robust, and this is accomplished by having a piece of metal and milling out exactly the shape that you need for the clasp to work. and it just gives a much more premium feel to the bracelet and the clasp. Next, we have the term movement, and that refers to what I would call the heart of the watch. It is the entire mechanism that makes the watch function, and this term is not exclusive to mechanical or automatic watches. Quartz watches also have movements. You can tell that the Zen movement is beautiful enough for them to want to display it. Quartz movements, you'll never see a display case back on one of them in most cases because typically they're very ugly looking. But a movement is the term to define everything that is in the watch that makes it actually function. It's the heart of the watch. Then we have the term power reserve, and this refers to how long a watch can keep on ticking when it is fully wound, before it completely dies. The Hamilton Khaki Mechanical has an 80-hour power reserve, meaning when I am done fully winding this up, I could set it down for 80 hours, and then at 80 hours and 1 second, the watch would stop ticking. It's not that precise, but you get the point. This is going to be a very important figure depending on what you plan or how frequently you plan to wear your watch. If you're planning to buy a watch to wear it only on the weekends and it's an automatic or a mechanical piece, know that you are going to have to wind the watch up and set the watch every single weekend when you pick it up to put it back on. But if you are buying a watch to wear during the week and not over the weekend, an 80-hour power reserve would be perfect for you. Anything over 48, maybe 60 hours would be great. You can take it off on Friday night, put it on your dresser, then on Monday morning, pick it back up, put it on, and you won't have to reset the time on the watch. So a power reserve will tell you how long the watch will keep on ticking without your input into the watch, whether it be manual winding or just wearing it and getting that automatic movement, that rotor to move. Next term is quick release, and this refers to a mechanism on specific straps that allow you to very quickly remove the strap without the need for a strap tool. You can see right here we have a little lever that we can pull on, and this depresses the spring bar, allowing you to remove it. To put the quick release strap back in, you place one side of the spring bar, press the lever, and then, maybe if you're not an idiot like me, there you go. Now it is set again. It's that quick and that easy. That's a quick release strap or quick release mechanism. Next, we have the term small seconds, and this refers to a sub-second dial. Here are two watches, the Sinn 556 and the Weiss Field Watch. The Sinn has a centralized second hand, meaning the second hand is mounted where the hour and minutes hand is. The Weiss watch does not have that. It just has the hour and minutes hand, and then it has this sub-60 second dial at 6 o'clock, which contains these seconds. So both of these watches present the exact same information. The seconds hand is just relocated for the Weiss. And just to be thorough and a little bit annoying, strap. That refers to a non-metal bracelet that goes on a watch. I call anything that is not a metal bracelet that is on a watch a strap. Whether that be a leather strap, whether that be a rubber strap, whether that be a nylon strap, these are all straps, and this would be a bracelet, even though probably all of these straps are about as expensive as this watch. That's a strap, that's a bracelet. Alrighty, I think that's going to wrap up today. This is the Casio Oceanus. This was recommended to me, and it is a really rad wristwatch, although it is a quartz. I do love me a mechanical, but I just wanted to showcase this. I love the case shape. Almost has that porthole design of the, you know that porthole design. You get it. Yeah, there you go. Those are the terms. I would have loved to have had my macro lens, but I just ordered it. It is not in yet. We will have those close-up beautiful shots soon, even though that goes against everything that I stand for. If you found this interesting or fun, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you hated it, give me a thumbs down. Tell me it sucked. but tell me why you think it sucked, because I am trying to improve and get better and provide you videos that you might find useful. Other than that, please subscribe if you do want to see more. If you don't want to see more, cool. I appreciate you watching this in the first place, and I will talk to you at another time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.